It's 9 o'clock. I apologize for anybody joining us right now. I want to say thank you for joining us. And I want to say, my name is Sergio Sanchez, by the way. I have a particular setup right now in this webinar through Zoom that all of us, man, had I known, gee, wow, I'd have purchased some Zoom stock at the beginning of this apocalypse. I'd be rich right now. I'm with KURV News, and we really appreciate friends, longtime supporters like David and all the family, Edna, everybody else at Lone Star National Bank. And they're just a phone call away, and so many questions. I know, I mean, we got the questions. We're a small business. I know that you guys have questions as a small business, and all of us have been affected. Some of us worse than others. Some of our business deemed non-essential by the powers that be that try to keep us all away from each other, right? In this season, we'll get to the other side. But in the meantime, the reps up in D.C. and the politicians, they set aside a big piggy bank and through SBA and other. I'm guessing it's mostly SBA, but I'll let David DeAnda to explain that to us right now. If you have any questions, you might have on your Zoom webinar chat a little prompt there on your screen to ask some questions. I think if you also turn on the audio, you'll be able to maybe ask. I would ask that you allow Dave, President of Lone Star National Bank, David DeAnda, you allow him a chance to make the presentation. Of course, he'll call for any questions, and we'll try to go through this quickly. And I know you'll probably have more questions tomorrow. Next day, this might be the first of maybe a few of these conversations. David DeAnda, President, Lone Star National Bank. The floor is yours, brother. Go ahead. Thank you.
Thank you, Sergio. Good morning to everyone. Look, I think the best way to go through the presentation is to actually take you guys through a presentation. And I'd like to tell you this morning that I don't think there is a business in South Texas or in the Rio Grande Valley or San Antonio that hasn't been affected. It's affected everyone. And I think we need to all understand that most banks are very familiar with what's happening. I happen to be fortunate to be an SBA certified banker because we are the bank for small business and always been focused on small business. And I guess I'd like to take you through the CARES Act a little bit about what the government has done. There are two types of loans that can be applied for. There's the SBA Direct 7A loan, which is being handled by the government direct. And then we have the PPP loan, which everybody wants to understand, which is the loan that can be forgiven for those employers that want to retain their staff. And there are specific guidelines that we as small businesses need to follow and adhere to so that that loan can be forgiven. I will tell you that it may work, Sergio, that we take the questions as they come up. That way I can address those questions before we move on to the next slide, because I think that there are a lot of questions that need to be followed, and there are the Payroll Protection Program, which is a PPP program, is important to understand, because as long as the small businesses do retain their existing employees, basically the government is saying, here's 8 weeks of payroll for you to retain those employees so that when we do open, you don't have to retrain the employees. And I think that's really, really critical for us as being involved in small business, but for the employees and the employers that are out there listening today, this is important for you. There's nothing about small business that's not important. It's important because we understand your business, number one, and number two, your customers want to identify with those people they already know. We know that the value of repeat and referral business is the people they know. So if we go through this Paycheck Protection Program, which I think I'd like to focus on this morning, I think it's really, really critical that we all understand that we as small business employers, people depend on us like y'all depend on the bank. And the one question I get continuously is, do we have to be banking at Lone Star National Bank to qualify for the program? I'm going to tell you, we've opened it up to all our families and our customers in the Rio Grande Valley. We understand you, and we're saying no. We'll take those applications as well. We may be a little faster than the other banks. I'm not going to guarantee you, but I'm going to tell you that we're going to do everything possible to make sure that we help you get through this process. Being in the situations that we're in, you can access the application online, fill out the application. I'll give you some forms at the end of the show to tell you what's necessary to be accompanied by those applications. We're going to try to make this as easy for you as possible. There's also the Economic Injury Disaster Loan Assistance Program. That particular program is handled directly by SBA. You have to apply with them online. The good thing about the Economic Injury Disaster Loan Assistance Program is within 3 business days of applying online, they send you $10,000 of like a grant, whether or not your loan is approved. And that is forgivable debt to you. It's not reported on your income tax return, but it's a short of assistance that the government has made for all those that are highly affected and they need this economic injury disaster. So that's the 7A program. I won't spend much time on that because I don't control that. And I can tell you that the response time and the assignment of a loan program to a loan officer at SBA has been very, very good. And they're very, very responsive. So I can tell you that I know that it works because we've had some customers apply through that as well. There's also a question is, can we apply for both? The answer is yes. You can apply for both programs. However, when you apply for both programs, we have to understand that you can't mix the same purpose as far as for employee payroll and then ask for it in the economic injury disaster program as the same process and the same form. So it's got to be 2 different purposes. These are 2 different types of loans. You may need working capital to get your business inventory purchased again, to help with your inventory purchases again, to help you with your loan payments again. That's the Economic Injury Disaster Loan Assistance Program. So I'd like to focus this morning on this Paycheck Protection Program because I think it's very important. So, you know, most people go through, let's start with the Paycheck Performance Program. How does it work? How do we qualify? So really for all of 2019, you must have been in business for all of 2019 or through February of 2020. But for 2019, if you were employed, you need to take your W-3s and your W-2s and all retirement benefits that you paid your employees. Most of you have your records for the quarterly reports that you do for payroll. Bring those to the bank, and what we'll do is we'll calculate how much you qualify for, including your cost benefits for 2019. Whatever you paid in payroll, you multiply that times 2.5 times, and there is a maximum loan amount of $10 million, right? And whatever that number equates to, we'll give you a number. We'll say, look, this is the payroll average you had over the last 52 weeks for your staff, and you must spend at least 75% of that money to go back to payroll, back to your staff. The idea is to keep them off the unemployment line and for you as employers to retain your staff. If the loan is not forgiven by chance because you didn't meet the requirements of keeping the people employed or not spending 75% of that amount back to the employee, you will have a loan through this program at 1% fixed for the remaining 18 months. The first 6 months of your loan, there are no payments. It's all deferred. So there's no interest payments, there's no principal payments. Basically, that money is forgiven. The PPP program, the Paycheck Protection Program, is for 2 years, and it's a very, very easy loan to understand. And the idea about this program is you as employers is to try to get the money forgiven to you as the employer. So not to have to pay it back. So the government said, if you can follow these rules and you can spend the money like you say you're going to spend it and keep these people off the employment line, we will forgive your debt. And if it doesn't matter if it's $10,000 or $2 million, the idea is to keep people in the Rio Grande Valley employed. And I think as employers, that's a very, very big benefit to you and to your employees. That's something that they won't forget. Now, here's that 75%. So you can be used for rent, for a mortgage, for interest, and for utilities. But those totals cannot exceed 25% of what you apply for. So we must remember that at all times, that you've got the idea behind this money is really to keep your staff employed. So is there any questions at this point?
75% is used for staff retention, which does not define if you keep 100% of your staff. It's just what you spend on. 75% of that has to be on paychecks. So you have to calculate that on your own to see if you're going to keep 50, 80%, or 100% of your staff. But 75% of that loan that you get needs to be paid. That needs to go to payroll. In other words, you calculate it on your own. Your business.
That's exactly right, Sergio. And whether you keep more of your staff, paying them more, the idea is to maintain at least the same number of employees, because on your W-2s and W-3s, there's a certain number of employees that you had. So let's say 20, right? You've got to retain at least 15 of those employees to meet the 75% threshold. So it goes back to number of people. So it can't be, I'm going to give these people a raise to keep 5 and unemployed 15, because it goes back to numbers as well.
The calendar date that it all starts, is it when you apply, or is it when you actually receive the note? When does the clock start?
The clock starts the day we fund your mortgage or the loans, right? So you have the day it starts is the day we fund. So for us, we get an approval, and they actually give us 10 business days from the date of the approval to start the clock. So once I tell you your loan's approved and you let your employees go, the idea is to call them back in, and you've got 10 days to bring them back in, and then come to the bank, get the money, and then your clock will start on that day. So that's the important part of this.
I'm wondering if you can help out one of our viewers, Mr. JC. He wants to know about businesses that issue 1099s. Where does he fall in all this?
So businesses that issue 1099s, there's a brand new program that starts tomorrow that's very specific with 1099s. I can tell you this, I can't give them the details now because they're still not out. I expect them out tomorrow morning. But 1099 employers will be able to start applying for the program tomorrow.
Wow.
I expect there'll be a guidance tonight, but this is only for W-2s and W-3s.
All
So
right.
1099 staff starts tomorrow, and there will be a guidance. So if you keep up with the SBA website, hopefully by tomorrow we'll have an update as to how you go about this 1099 staff.
Or tell JC to circle back starting tomorrow after you guys get the guidelines and dissect all of that and digest it.
Yes,
So
sir.
you guys will know how to apply that.
So we'll know more tomorrow about the 1099s.
All right, that's good. Thank you, JC. Appreciate it. Oh, by the way, gang, I know we got like a couple dozen folks participating right now. On your, my name's Sergio Sanchez. I'm with KURV News. David DeAnda, our friend from Lone Star National Bank. He's president of Lone Star National Bank. And this might be one of several conversations we have in the webinar forum. If you have any questions, you will see on your page that you're participating. On the bottom, there's a menu. It says mute and participants and polls. And there's a little portion that says chat. You click on that chat portion, and it'll bring up a window. Or maybe it's on the right-hand margin. Just look for the little voice box that says chat. Click on that and opens up a window. That way you can write out your questions, and I'll lob those over to Mr. Dede. Go ahead, Dave.
Okay, so let's talk a little bit about who qualifies for the PPP program. So all small businesses with less than 500 employees qualify for this program, and they have to be in business on or before February 15th of 2020. So if you were in business, say January 1st of 2020, you qualify. It's all S Corps, C Corps, LLCs, sole proprietorships, all independent contractors. your 501c3 nonprofits, churches, tribal groups, and veteran groups. So really, it's all encompassing almost for everyone to qualify for the program. So if you have questions about, do I qualify or not qualify, call us. We'll try to help you through that process as well. Do you require collateral on the PP loans? No, the collateral is not required. It's basically an unsecured credit that's there for the government. And the loan forgiveness piece is probably the most important and probably the most enticing piece of this program, is because there is a loan forgiveness amount, right? For 8 weeks, if you have the qualifying expenses, this debt's forgiven to you. And the forgiveness of the debt does not go on your tax return. It's basically money that you as an employer are eligible to receive. So I think it's very, very important that everybody understand you're not going to be taxed on it. It's unsecured credit. There's no collateral required. This is so you as a small business person can get your business going as soon as we're off this process of getting off the mandatory stay-at-homes and mandatory close your business. I mean, it's very difficult, but I tell you, the government's doing everything possible to give you an opportunity to get back in business quickly.
I got a question for you, Dave.
Yes, sir.
What if some of these businesses that are closed right now, they furloughed their employees because, you know, the individual unemployment unit plus $600 a week and all that. But they also need to crank up, get back and run. How does all that play into all this?
So here's what happens. That's why there's 10 business days for you to call your staff. If you furloughed your employees, you're going to have 10 days to call them back to your employment as an employer to bring them back into the business.
Okay.
Let's say I had 20 employees and I furloughed all 20. I've got to get 15 back working for me before the 10 days is up. Otherwise, the program they won't be forgiven for the debt. Now, if that's the case, I would recommend they go the 7A program, because the PPP is not for you, because you're going to have to pay it back within 2 years, right? So you probably won't get the free money, but you can apply for an SBA program, and that may help that small business get going again. But I mean, it really depends on you as an employer, what your goal is. I mean, do you want to take on all 8 weeks of payroll and try to get it forgiven? Do you want to bring your employees back? My recommendation is you need to look at every business from your perspective as an owner, saying, do I need all my employees back or not? And if I do, keep the good ones, keep the best ones, but you've got to keep 75% of that staff.
Going back to something you said earlier, and let's flesh that one out a little more. Maybe you can't bring all of them back, and you got that 10-day window to try to bring them back and keep them on payroll, and we're hoping that we get to the other end of the tunnel. Okay. I try to properly word this, and just so everybody understands. Do you keep the good ones? Give them a raise and try to hit that 75% mark, so that you entice them in instead of them staying away and drawing unemployment plus $600 weekly.
That's a very good point. And I'll tell you something. The idea is you bring in those that you have laid off or furloughed, or bring in 15 new ones, right? It doesn't have to be the same employees. You can bring in, but you've got to retain. Remember, the idea is to keep the same number of people working. So I had 20 and I bring 20 new ones, I hit my number of 20. As long as they're hitting the same W-2s and you're keeping people employed.
Is that number being looked at, the number of W-2s that you have?
That's exactly right. That's what they're there. Okay. So it doesn't necessarily mean the same Social Security number, but it means the same number of employees.
I got another question from a panelist. Are employees with salaries at $100,000 plus excluded from the average monthly payroll calculation?
So the way the program works, it goes up to $100,000 per employee. That's the cap, plus any benefits that they receive in the form of retirement, vacation, etc. Right? Those calculations are up and above the 100, but it's up to 100,000.
So it's the gross then, right? It's all benefits and salary, 100,000.
Salaries, all of that goes into the calculation.
Okay.
But if they made 120, 140, 160, it goes back to 100 plus the benefits. And that's all we can use as far as the calculation goes.
All right, keep going, Dave. David Deanda, President, Lone Star National Bank, with his presentation. Again, look for the bar that says chat. Click on that. You can type out your questions for Mr. Deanda. Go ahead, Dave.
So I think, you know, the whole idea behind the PPP loan, the principal forgiveness loan, is to keep our people working. And I think the idea as employers is we need to figure out a way to keep people working in Rio Grande Valley. And I think in any small business, you know, there's something that we all have a special level of experience for. So I think as small business owner, we have to ask ourselves, do I want to continue to do the same thing? Do I want to close, right? Or do I want to change the way I do my operations? And I think a lot of things that have happened in the last several weeks has made a lot of people look to how do I do things, my deliverables in another way. And we've had a lot of conversations about that. And I think that's why that 7A program is something that's out there available to small businesses that say, maybe I did something and I want to expand the way I'm doing my business today, or I want to change the way I do business today. I think that's very, very important. And I think it's important in that maybe you want to retool the way your business is today. So you look for a 7A program and say, maybe I want to do other things besides what I do. I want to add a different venue. I think the 7A program is just for you today to say, oh, this is the way I'm going to change it. So this PPP program, we're looking for keeping people employed. I want to change the way I do business. And I think that's critical for a lot of us and going back and doing the analysis. And I think the employers that are out there today need to ask themselves that very same question. Was I happy the way things were operating, or do I want to change or add to my business model? And if you do want to change, the 7A program is something you should really consider.
Question, kind of a repeat, and please expect just a couple of repeats. And I understand you guys just ask your questions, and I'll try to get the most salient ones repeated. Again, another question about 1099s. If we work with 1099 staff, the answer to the question is tomorrow, because 1099, the PPP 1099 stuff, that guidance starts tomorrow. That's what Mr. David Deanda told us earlier. And another question, how about companies that employ through staffing companies? How does all that work?
Well, so those staffing company issues, and you didn't issue a W-2 for those employees, you're going to have to show that expense. You have showed the expense some way when you paid them. So you either paid a staffing company, you need to bring that information to us as well, and maybe we can add it into the calculation. But usually when you pay a staffing company, they are issued a 1099 by the staffing company. So hopefully that you can get a copy of that 1099 for those individuals that they did hire as temporary employees, and we can include those in your calculation as well.
We have a client that submitted for the disaster loan assistance yesterday. Can she apply for both the disaster assistance and the PPP? You said yes earlier, but again, if you could repeat, just flesh out what the advantages, disadvantages would be, or what to look for.
So when you apply for the disaster loan, you just need to make sure that in your disaster loan application, you didn't ask for payroll or working capital to pay payroll for this program. And as long as you did not do that and say, I didn't use it for working capital for my employees, you may have to go back and rechange your application. But as long as it's two different purposes, you qualify for both. But it all goes back to your purpose on the original application you did for the disaster loan. If you put on there working capital for payroll, you will not qualify and they will disallow it. So you need to be very, very careful on the wording for your 7A loan, the disaster loan. The disaster loan is really a good loan because it's up to a 30-year loan at a 3.5% interest rate. So that is very, very enticing. I mean, it's very advantageous for small business, but you cannot use the 7A loan for payroll.
Let me repeat something that's very important that I learned a second ago with Mr. David DeAnda, Lone Star National Bank president. You have 10 days if you furloughed your employees, you are shut down, and you're thinking about getting PPP and keeping your business afloat for the next 2 months. You have 10 days to bring the employees that you want back. But if you had, let's say, 20 employees, if you had 20 employees at the beginning of all this fiasco, you still need to show I got 20 employees at the other end in order to convert this 1% loan to an outright gift from the federal government. 20 employees as of which date, Mr. D?
20 employees as of the date you make your first advance. So you're going to pay payroll. So you need to get, if you had 20, you have to have at least 15 by the first week you employ them, right? It can't be 20 employees by the end of the 8 weeks, because then you may qualify for some of your loan to be deferred or forgiven, but it won't be all of it. So the idea is to have at least 15 employees employed by day one when you bring them back into the business.
How does a 10-day window to bring them back fall into all this?
Okay, so here's how it works. From the day I give you an approval, so you'll call in and I say, you know what, your loan's been approved.
Okay.
So I can wait 10 business days from the date that I give you the authorization to say
There we go.
you've been employed. So say, I'm going to fund your loan, not this Friday, but next Friday. By next Friday, you must have those 15 people employed already so that they begin work the following week. When you issue your first check, you will have met the 75% threshold.
10-4. There are advantages, I suspect, that when you bring your folks back, and look, when they receive unemployment, they do not get the full unemployment check. They receive a 40, 50%, right, of what they normally get. Right now, the enticement is the $600 weekly that is also put on top of that as an assistance to individuals. But I suspect that as a manager, as an owner, you need to tell your employees your health care benefits, your retirement benefits, all that stays in place. You stay on with our company the next 2 months. Let's get beyond the season, and you won't have to worry about finding work elsewhere in the future. You won't have to worry about getting health insurance with somebody else. So we continue as is by keeping payroll moving for the next 2 months. I would imagine that would be an enticing offer on behalf of the employer who wishes to retain certain people.
And I also think that, you know, the benefit of is you're employed, you're gainfully employed, right? Unemployment the benefits may be good, but they're short term. And what most people want is stability in the long term, right? To be able to qualify to buy a house, to be able to qualify to buy a car. Those things you need to have sustained employment. And I think people are going to look for sustained employment. Now, you know what? You may not be able to pay your employee the $600 that the unemployment office would give, but as long as they got stability in their job and you give them a good working place, a good working environment, I think people are going to look for that. So I think that's really, really important for the employee to understand long term.
Okay. Let me go back to the 20 employee model at the beginning of the loan, because that number is going to be looked at. Now, let's say in 2 weeks, I receive the loan from my small business and I have my 20 employees. I call 10 back to have 20. Let's go. Is that number 20 going to be compared to how many people I had same time last year or last quarter or something like that?
It'll be compared to the December 2019 numbers. So the number of employees we had December 19, we're going to aggregate March of 19, June of 19, September of 19, and December.
So they'll look back at the last 4 months?
Right.
Okay.
So that's how we do our calculation. They're looking at what you did last year.
Is there wiggle room for conversation and negotiation, because we're looking at seasonal trends for some businesses as well?
So the issue there on the seasonal business is it's very difficult. Even if you are seasonal business, we'll look at that as well. But remember, the idea is 75% is the goal.
It's a payroll.
There's not Lone Star or us determining that number. It's the federal government or the SBA determining that number. So they're very, very difficult to attain. But my goal is always to say, look, I can't tell you about the numbers. I can tell you about the dollars. But the idea is to make sure we try to meet the numbers. So let's say you're a seasonal business and you're working produce and you have 100 employees from, say, April through July, right? This period, April through July, is coming up. right? And we'll look at April through July. That would have been 8 weeks, right? So you say April, so April would be coming up for your 8 weeks. So then the idea is to have at least 75 employees of those 100 employed by April, right? And you may go up as the weeks continue, right? But the idea is to make sure we have the same number of employees, the 75 by April, the day we kick off our business.
Okay, so maybe it's time to onboard early. Like think ahead. What's coming up in the summer for some of these businesses? You need to hire. You better hire now. Better bring it on board now.
Right.
So you keep the lights on.
The biggest concern I have is most people say, look, I want to apply early. I want to get approved, but I only have 10 days from the date I get the approval that I can delay funding. So it's really, the idea is to keep people gainfully employed and keep them off the unemployment line. That's the whole reason behind the program.
The lobbies are closed at the bank, at all Lone Star National Bank locations, as all banks. The lobbies are closed. So how do you do this? How do we do one-on-one and get all the details fleshed out with the loan officer?
So we are taking calls at the bank. I'll give you a number. It's 1-800-580-0322. Again, 1-800-580-0322. You'll call that number. It's the Lone Star National Bank hotline. They'll take your information. They will assign that call to one of the commercial lenders, and that commercial lender will call you back. The commercial lender will go through the process of telling you what forms you need, whether you're an existing customer or a non-existing customer. And our goal there is to get back to you with which program you best qualify for. And we'll go step by step with you. We'll tell you how to get the application, fill out the application, what forms you need. We'll meet with you because we are taking appointments at the banking centers. We take them by appointment only, and we'll see you. We'll schedule an appointment. We'll meet with you. We'll walk you through the process. And once this is all done, hopefully you'll have a positive experience with the bank. And obviously, is it mandatory to bank with us? No. Again, I'd like to tell you, we'd love to be your bank. I think it's really when things like this happen that you find out which banks are really there for small business. And I can tell you, our bank at Lone Star National Bank is really focused about small business in the Rio Grande Valley and San Antonio. We're here for our customers and non-customers. And I think this is our way to give back to the community to show we want to be your bank.
In order to expedite the delivery of that capital, I would imagine that your lending officers will also help set up an account. If they are not banking with you, help set up an account. Let's get the account number, and let's do direct deposit, and boom, you got the capital ready to go.
Absolutely. And that's the best way to do so, is to have a special account where you run all this money through. So at the end of the 8 weeks, we're asking you to validate and verify the numbers. You've got that account open. You can show where you paid your rent, where you paid where you paid your mortgage bills, where you paid your electricity bills, and when you paid your payroll. So it's really, really going to be beneficial for the customer as well. So I've got a customer that says, that asked for have a question. He said, thanks for doing this. Once we apply with you, I know you guys are busy. What do you recommend we do to make sure our application is being processed? Is it communication with the team? So I can tell you this, it's our best interest and your best interest to let you know that once we take your application and we work through the process, we'll call you as soon as the application is approved and ready to be signed. It takes, and I don't want to lie to you, but it's taking about 4 business days to process the application and get it to SBA. We'll get an approval, but we have like 600 applications. We've already approved 300. We've already are typing loans for 300, and we're basically working 7 to like 11 and getting late night approvals. And once those approvals are done, we get it to loan administration. So it's taking about 4 business days to get those things processed. Now, I can tell you that we understand the urgency behind our customers, but once we do get it, I'll tell you that it takes about 4 business days to get you your money. Now, do we fund on 4 business days? Well, that would depend really on what the customer wants us to do, because by the time we say we'll get you the money in 4 business days, they may say, hold up, I don't have my employees yet. I need to wait the 10 business days to hire my staff, get them back on board, and then we'll close, and we'll make those accommodations for you as well.
You will notify before you close, right?
Absolutely. They've got to come sign documents.
What do you mean?
There's another question I have. It says, I have 3 different companies. Can I apply for every single one individually? And actually, the idea is absolutely yes. Every company qualifies as on its own, as long as, again, you have the W-2s and the W-3s to support it. And it says, do you know the name of the program for the 1099s that's coming out tomorrow? It's the same PPP program, but it's for 1099 employers. It's the same program. It's going to work under the same basis as this one does, except that they're going to give us the rules for what can be a 1099 employer. And let me explain to you why a 1099 employer is different and employee is different. Usually most 1099 employees work for different companies. Maybe one works for a physician in the morning and one works for a physician at night. They're all specialties. What happens is 1099 employees also qualify for the PPP program because they are also getting laid off. So we need to make sure that you don't claim them as a 1099 employer and then they file one as a 1099 employee, because really they're self-employed. So they're saying, I may have multiple businesses and I've been let go or I've been not hired by these. So they've got some benefits due to them as well. So it's going to be kind of interesting as to how this 1099 employee will work, but I can't give you the details because I don't.
They're going to give you the information later. Businesses that are struggling to stay open right now, they've retained some folks. They're selling food, providing essential services. They're trying, but they're open because they're deemed essential. Most of them probably be food-based, right? Versus folks who are closed right now. Can folks who are open also apply for PPP right now?
Yes, sir, they can. Everybody qualifies for the PPP program. It all goes back to the forgiveness of the note, right? That's how do I use my funds? If it's to pay for your employees, again, 75% of that money must go back to the employee's payroll. And as long as you're doing that, and you can pay your rent, you can pay your mortgage, you can pay your utilities and your interest, but it must, 75% must go back to the employee for it to be forgiven.
300 and some odd $billion for this big cookie jar. Do you have any idea where we are? Is it halfway exhausted? Do you think if you need to do another one of these webinars and get more folks to come and visit, do you think, well, we might be able to do one next week, Monday, Tuesday, or something like that, or do you think it's going to be exhausted by then?
No, I believe that this program, I've talked to a couple of state reps, and they've told me that they're going to do their best to continue to get this program refunded until everybody that needs the help's been helped. So I can't really guarantee that, but I can tell you it's in your best interest to apply early.
Yeah.
In case that something doesn't happen that we want to happen, right? I know last night there was another program approved for mid-sized businesses. So I think the government's going to continue to help. From all I can hear and discussing with our state reps, they're telling me, David, we're going to continue to fund this until we help all of our people. So I hope that's the case.
Hotline for Lone Star National Bank for the loans, and start that conversation, 800-580-0322, 800-580-0322. And do they leave a message or do they get a human being? Do you have any idea?
Yeah, you will speak to a live person. That's our call center. And you will get a person that actually answers that phone. So they're usually from 8 in the morning to 6 in the evening.
Anything else I forgot, folks? Final altar call for now. Let me go back to the question real quick, make sure I didn't forget, leave somebody out. JC wants to know, do I tell my staff to apply for themselves or do I pay them a salary if they do not make a commission? He's one of those businesses that is structured that way, where it's like beauty salons and places like that, where it's salary or commission almost.
Well, right now it may be too late to make that decision, right? Because it's going to go as to what you did last year. the recommendation in business is always, if you're the employer and you're paying your employees and you have certain expectations they meet, obviously a W-2 always works best, right? And a commission-based business. But again, once you accept them on your payroll, there's an obligation as you as the owner every week to pay that check. So you have to make sure that they're meeting the obligations or expectations that you as the business owner have.
Anything else, Dave?
That's the last question I had, subject.
Okay, but that's good. Thank you, Mr. D. Thank you. And if you need to hop aboard again, we'll do it again. Of course, bring it back on the radio and disperse it all over the place as well.
Yes, sir. I appreciate you. Thank you.
Thank you for making the time for us and speaking with our folks. This is a recorded conversation. I don't know how, but I think one of our in-house nerds will explain to me how we'll be able to onboard this for reference. You guys can go back and look at it later. On behalf of Mr. David Deanda, President, Lone Star National Bank, I'm Sergio Sanchez. And again, a very big thank you to all the participants today, and we'll talk soon.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.